Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. Massive leaks today with our first look at the next generation of Formula 1 cars. After lots of speculation in the recent weeks, they will be smaller and lighter than the current models. They will still have ground effect on them, but there might be a return of active aerodynamics on the front and rear wing and will drastically change the way they currently generate their downforce. Which teams could this potentially favour? Lots to get into today. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, kind of a wild one actually that was confirmed today. Fortnite, Lewis Hamilton collaboration. Hamilton's got his character in the game now as of just a couple of hours ago. The thing that people will quite like about this actually is that Roscoe, Hamilton's dog, has made it in as well. So on like the thing that you fly in on, here's Roscoe, and he also has another render of himself as well. So we're seeing lots of renders of Hamilton in the game, and Hamilton's like a Black Panther-esque in a way character model with Roscoe. And we're going to see more renders in the coming minutes of the next generation of Formula 1 cars. Quickly from Michael Andretti, we saw yesterday that Andretti Cadillac and General Motors have confirmed they will have their own power unit come 2028. Now I do wonder if Andretti was to get rejected, would GM, because GM like that is a big one for F1, you know, that's a massive positive for Formula 1, especially with their intended growth into the US market, to get a power unit manufacturer as big as General Motors to agree to come into Formula 1. But, you know, if they were to reject Andretti, would GM then say, actually, yeah, we're not so convinced, guys, we're going to be out of here as well? And Michael Andretti makes it very clear, our commitment to excellence will not be taken lightly as we continue planning to enter F1 as soon as possible, and in 2028, Andretti Cadillac will compete as a true American works team. So you can imagine which other teams he might be calling out there. This historic partnership will accelerate the sport in the fast-growing US market as well as globally. This is the thing. Every time they jump through certain hoops, the teams say, well, you know, we're not really sure what value you're going to add to the sport. Well, Andretti is making it very clear what value they will add to the sport, and arguably significant more value than some of the current teams offer to the sport. Let's be perfectly honest on this one. Now, there are plenty of one-off liveries for this weekend's Las Vegas Grand Prix. Red Bull revealed theirs last night in a nightclub. They lowered their car down from the roof with a new livery on. Okay, not the actual RB19, I imagine just like the spec version they did at the start of the season, but with this livery, which the more I look at it, the less I like it. At first, I actually quite liked it. It's look, it's got these purple vibes going on, and that reminds many of the pretty iconic Infinity Red Bull liveries. I think this is maybe the RB9 from back in the day when, yeah, pretty iconic purple Red Bull liveries. It's somewhat similar. There's also other special liveries this weekend as well. This one from Williams is a little bit, I don't know, do you guys think this is over the top somewhat? It actually has the Vegas sign on it, Williams. I don't know if I'm a massive fan of this one, to be honest, but there's actually 5 one-off liveries this weekend, one of which is on the Ferrari that we saw. The McLaren is different as well. I'm not really sure how much different. Okay, Jack Daniels, is that usually there? I don't know. Guess that's a collaboration. This is the Red Bull. This is the Williams. They've also changed the Alpine. I'm not really sure I massively like any of them. The Red Bull is pretty good, to be fair. I like the purple, and I guess the Ferrari is nice, kind of old school retro style with the red and the white. But apart from that, the other teams, I guess, are going to be the same. But yeah, kind of crazy to see 5 different changed liveries for a weekend such as this. But speaking of liveries, this is what the next generation of Formula 1 cars is going to look like under the Audi Sport livery, which, well, may or may not be a thing on current rumours in 2026. AMuS, they have collected all of the rumours from behind the scenes on the way the next generation of Formula 1 cars are looking, what the rumours are about it, and what they're going to look like. So these are the highlights. Wheelbase minus 20 centimetres. So the cars are going to be shorter by at least 20 centimetres between the wheels. That's a good thing. It's not a drastic change. We're not going back to 2008 sizes or even before that. But I think it is a step in the right direction. They're going to be like smaller as well width-wise, minus 10 centimeters on that. So it's not drastic. It's probably not something that at first glance you're really going to massively notice compared to the current gen, but they will be smaller, which is good. The wheels are smaller as well. To be honest, I'm not really sure what was wrong with the 13-inch wheels that we used to have a couple of years ago. They're 18-inch at the moment. I don't really know why they need them. Okay, I'm sure they have their reasons, but the smaller the tyres, the lighter the tyres, and therefore that's extra weight saved. So I don't know. They're going to 16-inch wheels. This is one of the big ones, though, on the aerodynamic concept of the way these cars are going to be designed. On the floor and the front wing, it's very much an inwash aero concept. And we will see this, when, especially when we look at the front wing, the way that it's designed. which is very different to what the teams have tried to do over the last couple of seasons and should be very much beneficial to helping cars to follow more easily. New rear wing design, we'll see that as well. Wider flow deflectors and also active aerodynamics, the return of it for the front wing and the rear wing. This is a really big deal that we'll dive into here in a second. So we'll go through some of the images here in a second. The diffuser is going to be limited in height. So at the back of the car, less angle of the diffuser, less downforce generated basically by the diffuser, and therefore they're going to come up with other ways to get around this. Active aero though is a big one. At least some sort of DRS effect is being considered on the front wing and the rear wing. So at the moment the flap opens up on the rear wing, but if active aero is in play again, which basically means that the car at certain speeds can use hydraulics to actually move parts of the car in a way to reduce downforce on the straights and generate more downforce in the corners. There was a theory a while ago that possibly the car in front would, imagine DRS right now, the car behind gets it to increase straight line speeds. There might be a way to, if you're close to a car in front, their downforce level will be actively reduced and therefore you get a better chance to follow. I'm not sure how they're going to approach this one, but the idea of active aero opens a big kettle of fish, again, that we haven't really had in Formula 1 for a long time. And the idea of a DRS effect on the front and the rear wing is quite fascinating. The rear wing gets 4 elements instead of 2, a main blade and 3 flaps. So there's going to be a substantial rear wing on these cars. We'll see them in a second. And I guess that's to compensate to some degree for the diffuser being limited, more limited than it was before. One of the big intentions here, it seems, is to make these cars better to race and easier to follow. We have seen no doubt over the last couple of seasons, these cars are now not too dissimilar, these 2022 spec, to what they were a couple of years back when it was very difficult to follow through the corners. A lot of that is because of the outwash design, the downwash design that a lot of teams currently go for and Red Bull have, well, pushed ahead with over the last couple of years. The weight as well is another big one. We want the cars to be lighter generally. I don't think anyone wants them heavier. So, you know, that's pretty much how it is. They say at least 20 kilos lighter, if not 25 or potentially 30. The wheelbase has gone from 360 to 340. Smaller cars automatically mean less mass. Now, this is what we'll discuss here on the inwash design in a second. It's probably better to look at this on the pictures that we will look at. But apparently initial sketches under the project name Fangio showed that the end plates of the front wing are angled so that they guide the air past the wheels on the inside, which is a big deal. So the idea is that the air is going to be kept on the inside of the car rather than forced to the outside to generate the downforce in the outwash, downwash design the teams generally currently go for. Now, in order to achieve this, they're doing a couple of different things. In front of the side pods and in front of the rear wheels, there are vertical baffles on the underbody, and also I think the Venturi tunnels are going to be somewhat taller, actually, as they say here, to compensate for the loss of downforce due to a less pronounced rise in the rear diffuser. The Venturi tunnels at the front entrance can be set higher, so possibly more downforce from the floor than from the diffuser at the rear of the car. Very interesting what this means for the way the aero is going to be generated, and let's be honest, these renders are of, you know, a default setup base model. Who knows what the teams are actually going to turn up with to the track when they look into the regulations and see what is actually possible. Greater slipstream effect here, reducing the turbulence that the car radiates to the rear of it and therefore increasing the ability for cars behind to follow. Should be more overtaking, and with the active aerodynamic possibilities, it opens the door to, you know, some sort of variable DRS system if it is all required. So apparently the cars aren't going to be that much slower, and this is what they look like. So, okay, it looks pretty similar to what we currently have, but probably just a better version of it, to be honest. The car looks a bit smaller, which it is. It looks, well, you can't really tell the width of it, to be fair. The tyres are slightly smaller, and sure, the side pod design, this is like a base version. We don't really know, but if we look at it in more detail, we'll see, you know, this is a pretty substantial rear wing on this thing. There's also a couple of these barge board looking things on the side to try and keep the air to the inside. This is the key intention, it seems, of these regulations, is to not allow the teams, as much as they can, to generate any downforce via outwash. This is a big talking point of the last couple of seasons. This, for example, is the Mercedes front wing from last year that was well known for doing this. It's been a talking point of these regulations. Try to generate more downforce from the floor and of the air you generate from the wings. Try and keep that, you know, the airflow inside the car. But Mercedes found a way to have a gap between the end plates here and the underside, and they've still found a way to do this year, even though they tried to close up this loophole last year, the FIA. the air comes out the side. This, I mean, look at the front wing on this thing. There is a very clear intention here from the FIA to keep that airflow on the inside. Look at the way that these end plates are being designed, it seems, according to AMuS, to force the airflow to the inside of the car. So I kind of like the way these cars look. I think they will be looking good in 2026. I wish they were slightly smaller and slightly thinner, but it is what it is. I think it's a step in the right direction. The prospect of active aero is very interesting. To be fair, this front wing looks not too dissimilar in some ways to what they did with Formula E recently. And to be honest, I think looking at this car, this is probably what it should have been in 2022, really, compared to what we currently have. The rear wing, though, is pretty massive. I mean, yeah, 3 flaps, I mean, kind of 4 elements rather than a 2 that we have, which does open the door for, like, you know, maybe the top one is the DRS flap, or maybe that's not even needed at all. But yeah, active aero, that sounds, you know, the idea that you can raise, lower the front and rear wings depending on the circumstances. It's going to open a lot of doors to some really cool ideas from different teams. And we've seen ideas, you know, teams like Mercedes, DAS and stuff like this over the last several years in various ways that have been outlawed. And I'm sure that this set of regulations is going to open a big door, hopefully, to the teams to really try and innovate in certain ways and find loopholes and ideas that might eventually be ruled illegal, but at least for the time being might give teams some degree of advantage. This is another angle of the front wing, actually. I mean, this doesn't look much at all like what we currently have in Formula 1. As you guys can see, very much so. You've got these end plates which are forcing the airflow inwards. There's really no way that the teams can get the air going on the outside of the front wheels, which they're currently doing. So pretty much all the airflow is going to be forced on the inside of the front wheels, through the side pods that way, and onto the diffuser. So look, it's an early render. We don't really know what it's going to look like in due course, but there are a few interesting pieces here that, you know, the idea that the outwash and the downwash design and the way that the side pods, let's say, currently work on a car like the Red Bull that has been copied by basically everyone, that's not going to work in 2026, at least in the same way that it does currently. But ground effect is still going to exist, and if teams can't get the hang of ground effect, then as Red Bull have, for example, that is going to be, you know, a problem for them, right? But you would think that by the time we get to 2026, surely the understanding of the way that ground effect works in this current generation of cars is going to have evolved to some degree. It's not going to just be Newey that knows how these cars work in a couple of years' time. You would think the other teams, and Mercedes especially, who have not done well in the ground effect era so far, will get a better hang of it come 2026. And with active aero, there's a lot more possibilities. So generally, I like the look of these things, but intrigued to your perspective in the comment section below. Going into the Las Vegas weekend, there has been some comments on Mercedes on the way their car is going for this year and also for next year, saying that he 100% knows Hamilton, what went wrong in Brazil, what the issues were. Toto Wolff said this the other day as well. They know their setup mistakes, but it's not like Hamilton said, oh yeah, we can fix it this weekend and we're going to be back in business. He says, yeah, didn't do a good job, lots of learnings. Through failure, there's always a lot of things to learn. So we know where we need to go, where we need to develop. So it seems like some of their issues in Brazil weren't necessarily just setup. Maybe they were setup related, but they were fundamentally related to problems with the car that they now know they need to fix. So, you know, another addition to the list of problems Mercedes need to fix here over the winter. And even Hamilton goes on to say, coming here, hopefully we'll have a better time, but the W14 is not a world championship winning car, and I still don't think it's a race winning car. And certainly at this track, it doesn't really on paper suit Mercedes much, if at all. He also talked about the winter development and said that I'm in a Teams group chat basically with different departments and I'll always be checking in. Of course, I'll unplug, I'll have to leave the guys to do what they do best, but I'm always going to be like, hey, I wonder how it's going. But you've just got to give them time. It takes time to develop the car. It's small steps each week. On top of that, if I've got to, you know, get my head in the right space, I've got to fit and get prepared for the season. It's been a killer season, right? So many races. I know that Toto Wolff said the other day, he ideally wants to go to like 15 of the races a year. He doesn't want to go to all 20 plus, which is definitely understandable. And George Russell also went on to comment on the Mercedes and says that we, as in himself and Hamilton, have different driving styles, but the fundamental limitations that we both face are the same. We're cautiously optimistic going into next year. We're not sitting here thinking, why are we slow? We know why we're slow. We know we've got so many issues with the car and we have so many problems we want to solve. That gives us hope that if we do solve them, we can make a big step forward, which is true. But it's true for every team. If they solved all of their problems, they'd be, you know, pretty much at the front of the field in some respects. And but it's interesting that Russell says we have so many problems. Like, are Mercedes confident they can fix all of their problems for next year? Like, let's say they fix 2 or 3, 4, 5 of them. do they then create another couple? I don't know. So yeah, you don't want to have so many problems, but then again, if you're getting quite a lot of P2s and you have so many problems, then if they do get it right, then they should be winning races, could be fighting for the championship. Intrigued to your thoughts on that. Just before we close out, there has been some talk as well on contracts. Charles Leclerc, as he always does, says that he wants to drive for Ferrari. He even got asked the question, would you swap places with any driver on the grid? And he said no. Not sure I fully buy that. Like, if you actually gave him the chance to swap with Max to go into the Red Bull and put Max in the Ferrari situation, he'd probably take it, wouldn't he? But he's not going to say that. And yeah, more than likely he's going to stay at Ferrari. It doesn't seem like there's any other good opportunities arising for now, unless something crazy happens at Red Bull or potentially Mercedes, or even McLaren become a front runner and Norris goes to Red Bull. I don't know. But McLaren do want to prevent that happening. They're having conversations with Lando apparently right now to try and extend his deal beyond 2025. I don't know if it would be wise for Lando to sign this yet. But, McLaren have made some good progress. If they start out next season well, and all of a sudden they're looking like a potential contender again at the front of the field, maybe even for a championship, then sure, I can see Lando saying, you know what, yeah, this is the place I want to be. But until then, I think Norris should be a little bit cautious, just to see how things go. He's got a contract still for another couple of seasons at McLaren, so he might as well wait a little bit longer, I would say, before putting pen to paper again. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Just the final thing to mention, I'm pretty sure the Brawn GP documentary thing that Keanu Reeves and Button and all those guys put together is basically live now. I haven't watched it myself, but I know that it's got a lot of good reviews, people saying that it's done justice to the story. Reeves is very much engaged in it, and it does a much better job maybe than Drive to Survive does in terms of actually telling the story of what actually happens rather than just bigging it up for the cameras. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.